Hi there, my name is Michael from Guitar Lessons County Antrim, and I'm going to give you 5 killer chord changing tips. So tip 1 is to get your fingers as close to the frets as possible. Okay, so I'll show you what that means with C chord. So just this normal C chord here, and I check out how far across my fingers are on each of the frets. It's not over towards the middle or that edge, it's right over as far as I can get in the fret. Sitting like that. And there's 2 main reasons. 1, you get a slightly better sound out of the fret doing that, and 2, you don't have to push your fingers down as hard, so it's a win-win situation. So tip 2 is to look for common fingers between a couple of different chord shapes, okay? And there's many of these, you may be aware of some of them, or this may be a new concept to you. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. So if we take the C chord, and I wanted to go to an A minor chord, notice that the first and middle finger are in the same place for both chords. So you have to adjust your hand position a wee bit, but you don't have to lift them off. And that's the thing I want you to try. Get used to leaving those fingers sitting there when you don't have to lift them off. And I'll give you one more example of that. We could do an E minor to a C chord. So I use this E minor with those first 2 fingers because it has quite a few handy little changes if you do it that way. Because I can leave the middle finger in the same place for E minor and C. And that's a really good thing to look out for when you're playing. So tip 3 is to slide your fingers where possible when you're changing to different chords. So this kind of builds on the last one there. I'll give you a couple examples of this. Let's say I was playing a D chord and I wanted to go to an E chord. Look what happens to my first finger. It's on the same string, but I just slip it back 1 fret instead of lifting it off and having to place it again. So that's a handy little thing to do and to look for in your chord changes. And I'll give you one more here. If I was going to do an A7 to a D, check out what happens to the 3rd finger. It stays on that B string and just slides over a fret, so that gets rid of any unnecessary movement and your fingers dancing about. Just like that. So tip 4 is building on the last couple of points again. It's about minimizing movement, and this applies to anything you do on guitar, but especially with chord changing. So what I want you to look for is when you're doing changes, especially ones that you're not so good at, you want to see what all your fingers are doing. So you want to actually look at what the individual fingers have to do for each change, okay? So if I was to do that big 4 finger G, and I went to a B7 chord. So those 2 chords have similar shapes, but they're using all 4 fingers, so that takes a bit more thought and dexterity to coordinate. So if you were struggling with that a little bit, what you can do is isolate what each finger has to do. So look when you're changing to see if there's a finger that's not getting to its target, that's lagging behind the other ones, because ultimately you want them to land nice and relaxed at the same time like that. But I know that's not always the case, especially if you're more of a beginner player. So that's something I want you to look out for. Check out what every finger is doing to make sure it's doing the most efficient thing. One more tip I'll leave you with is to check how clear your chords sound, okay? And we can do this in a very simple way, just by picking through the strings. So I'll take a good old C chord here. And and thankfully it's all clear there. Now with beginner players with chords like C and G and the kind of more stretchy ones where they're not maybe as easy as an A minor or an E minor or something, you might get some strings that are a bit dull when you check, okay, which is fine. So I might check and it might not come out so good, like that there, because my finger wasn't pushing down quite hard enough there. So you want to look out for little imperfections like that, because when you're strumming away you might not notice those things and you can get away with it a bit more. But take the time to sit down and look through your chords and see just exactly how clear they are and where you have to adjust.